A very good greetings to our lecturer Dr. Amizam. We are from Group 9 are here to present about the contributions of Alvin H Anderson and Paul A Samuelson in developing the ideas of Keynesian School and also to discuss about Post-Keynesian and New Keynesian School of Economic Thought.
Hi, my name is Lim Kok Kyung. Today I want to talk about the Keynesian School, the developments in Canis. The first two sections will cover the Hansen's and Samuelson's idea, help move their version of Canis approach to economic directly into the mainstream of macroeconomy theory. The third idea is look at the ideas of Post-Keynesian economy, who contend that the contemporary neoclassical synthesis is not only seriously flawed but also incompatible with Keynes' own ideas. The last section is discuss the idea of new Keynesian economics that reject the idea of post-Keynesian and refocus their attention on the traditional Keynesian question of why recession occurs.
Hi everyone, my name is Dunisha Virappan. My metric number is 277382. Alvin H Anderson from 1887 to 1975. Alvin H Anderson is born in Webuck, South Dakota. He attended high school at Sioux Falls Academy and enrolled at Youngstown College, where he graduated in 1910. He received his PhD from University of Wisconsin in 1918, and then he taught at Brown University and University of Minnesota. At Minnesota, he published Business Cycle Theory 1927, a book that earned him a reputation as being one of the nation's leading macroeconomic scholars. In 1937, 1 year after Keynes' publication of the General Theory, Anderson has joined the faculty at Harvard. He earlier had pointed out a mathematical error in Keynes' treatise on money, and his initial reaction to the general theory was less enthusiastic. However, a following deeper study of Keynes' systems of ideas, Anderson soon changed his opinion. He and his students made Keynes' works and its policy implication the central focus of their fiscal policy seminar. Several of those attending the seminar became prominent contributors to economics and public policy. In 1941, Anderson published Fiscal Policy and Business Cycle, which supported Keynes' analysis of macroeconomic problems of the 1930s. He endorsed active and continuous policies by government to stabilize the economy. Because of his strong advocacy of government intervention to promote full employment, people called him the American Keynes. Anderson's influence was international. 10 of his books were translated into one or more language, totally 29 translations. Her guide to Canis became familiar to thousands of graduate students who use it in struggle to understand the more esoteric sections of Canis, the general theory. 1 year after a publication of General Theory, X published an important journal article, Mr. Canis and the Classes, a suggested interpretation. X pointed out the Canis theory of interest rate and theory of equilibrium income was indeterminate. Canis viewed that interest rate as determined by liquidity preference and money supply. Once the market rate of interest is determined, the level of investment becomes known. Together with consumption expenditure, investment determine aggregate expenditure and thus level of national income and domestic input. X correctly noted that Keynes' liquidity preferences schedule itself depends on the level of income. At higher income level, people desire to hold more money to buy greater volume of goods and services available. The level of income depends on interest rate through investment, but the interest rate depends on the level of income through liquidity preference. X then suggested a way to resolve this indeterminacy and is so develop a unified economy model that synthesizes the Keynesian and neoclassical perspective. Today, we refer to the X Anderson synthesizers as ISLM model. Sir John X, 1904 to 1989. He born in 1904 at Warwick, England. He got education at Clifton College and Balliol College from 1917 until 1926. X lecturer at London School of Economics and Political Science, Cambridge from 1926 to 1938, and he became professor at University of Manchester. Its most familiar contribution in macroeconomics was the X-Anderson ISLM model published in his paper Mr. Canis and the Classics Suggested Interpretation. This model formalized an interpretation of the theory of John Maynard Keynes and described the economy was balanced between three commodities: money, consumption, and investment. He was co-recipient of the Nobel Prize in Economic Science with Kenneth J. Arrow in 1972 for his pioneering contribution to general equilibrium theory and welfare theory. The IS curve shows the potential point of equilibrium in the good market. The curve represents all the combination of interest rate and the level of income at which planned investment is equal to planned saving. The LM curve shows the potential point of equilibrium in the money market. It indicates all the combination of interest rate and the level of income at which money supply is equal to money demanded. The equilibrium interest rate and the level of income are determined where IS and LM curve intersect. This is the only combination of interest and income where there is an equilibrium in both the good market and the money market. Anderson and others demonstrated that it is easy to add government spending and taxation into the ISLM model and use it to analyze the interest rate and income affect the alternative fiscal and monetary policy. Government spending is added to the level of spending and taxes are added to the level of saving.
A very good day to Sir and dear classmates. I'm Sita, my magic number is 277086. I'm here today to present or explain further about IS and LM curve which my friend mentioned just now. So let's start with IS curve. What is IS curve? IS denotes investment saving curve. The IS curve represents all the combination of interest rates and level of income at which planned investment equals to planned saving. There is another definition for IS curve. Do you guys want to know? Let me tell you. IS curve also represents various combination of interest rate and income along with the good market in its equilibrium. So there are 4 steps in deriving IS curve. The first thing is to draw the investment demand curve followed by a 45-degree line and comes the saving function line. Then at the end, IS curve will be derived. In the first step, as we can see, investment demand curve derived. The graph indicating inverse relationship between the interest rate and investment. Axis X represent investment while axis Y represent interest rate. As we can see in the graph, when interest rate is I1, the level of investment will be capital I1. And then the second step, which is a 45-degree line measure of investment vertically and horizontally. At this stage, axis X represents investment and axis Y represents saving. Please make sure the difference between step 1 and step 2 in the axis label. B1 is the point directed line upward from A1. And step 3 shows the Keynesian saving function. According to Keynesian, when income, which is Y, increase, total savings will eventually increase by a fraction. Yes, this fraction is called as slope in saving function and also MPS in Keynes. For your information, MPS refer to marginal propensity to save. At C1, this is the point where equilibrium occurs when investment, which is I1, equal to saving, which is S1. And then comes the Y1, which is the income level. Last but not least, in the step 4, IS curve derived. And axis X represent income and axis Y represent interest rate. Please make sure to label the axis correctly. Now, let's get to know the LM curve. LM denotes liquidity money. The definition of LM curve is LM curve depicts the set of all levels of interest rate and output GDP at which total investment equals to total saving. There are 4 steps in deriving LM curve, which is more or less similar to IS curve derivation. So let's look into the steps. First, we'll start off with speculative demand for money, and second one is money supply curve, and then transaction demand for money, and then comes the LM curve. In step 1, it shows the total amount of money people wants to hold for speculative purpose. When interest rate is low, speculative demand will increase. This is because the rise in interest rate will cause the price of bonds to fall. Vice versa, when interest rate is high, speculative demand will reduce. And this is because opportunity cost of holding cash is thought to be too large. And here comes the second step, which is total money supply. Total money supply includes total money for speculative demand and transaction demand. To form equilibrium, the total quantity of money supply should be equal with money demanded, which is M is equal to L. B1 is the point upward directed from A1, which is in step 1. Step 3 shows the total money needed by the people for transaction purpose. C1 is the point transformed from B1. At C1, the national income is Y1. And then we state the point D1 in step 4 using the position of point A1 and C1. LM curve derived, which represent the potential equilibrium between supply and demand in the money market. And that's all for LM curve. And here the last part comes equilibrium. Equilibrium forms when LM and IS curve intersect. So as we can see, when the LM and IS curve intersect, it shows income is Y0 and interest rate is I0. And that's how we find the equilibrium interest rate and income level. That's all from me. Thank you.
Now we talk about the Paul-Antony solution. Now we talk about the background of Paul-Antony solution. Paul-Antony solution was born in the Gary, Indiana on May 15, 1915 years. After receiving his Bachelor of Arts from the University of Chicago in 1935, Samuelson enrolled in the Harvard graduate program in economics in 1941. Already as a brilliant mathematics student, Samuelson decided early to apply mathematics to the body of economic theory. The result of his effort was his doctoral dissertation, The Foundation of Economic Analysis, published as a book in 1947 years. He was recognized by countless professionals in the field, and his textbook, Economics, published in 1948 years, was familiar to millions of people who had taken the college economics. In 1970, he was announced as the first American economist to be awarded the Nobel Prize. Now we talk about the multiplier and accelerator interaction. For post-Keynesian in 1939, he published two papers that identify and explore the interaction between the principle of the multiplier and accelerator. John Marie Clark discussed the acceleration principle as early as 1970 years. He argued that the fluctuation in the output and the price of capital goods are much greater than those for the consumer goods that they produce. Well, Hansen was aware that was an interaction between two principles and suggests to post-Keynesian that he used mathematical skill to exploit the ideas. Using different equations, Samuelson demonstrated that change in income will depend on the size of MPC and the size of accelerator coefficient. Samuelson showed that depending on the values of the multiplier and accelerator, increase in investment is continuous. An initial autonomous increase in investment could produce a wide variety of outcomes. Samuelson showed that it is the interaction between the multiplier and accelerator that give rise to cyclical punctuation in economic activity. Let's see this picture about the process of multiplier and accelerator. Increase in autonomous investment will increase the income through the multiplier. When income increase and induced investment will also increase through the accelerator. Because of the investment increase, the aggregate demand and income increase by even a large amount. To illustrate the essence of Samuelson's approach, this is the basic Keynesian identity. Consumption, tax revenue, investment spending due to the acceleration principle, and import all increase as income rise. An equation can be formulated for each of the dependent variables in the identity. The most complicated equation is the one of for C, consumption, which we derive as follows. C is equal to the autonomous level of consumption plus the consumption related to the level of income. A is the consumption spending that is independent of the level of income. B is the marginal propensity of consumption. T0 is the tax that must be paid disregard of the level of income. Ty is the tax that rises as income rise. T is the marginal propensity to tax. Now let's see the income determination of I, G, X, and M function. The order equation need to formulate an income determination from equation are following. I equal to the I0 plus ZY, where I0 is an investment that is independent of income, of Z is the marginal propensity to invest. Term Z shows the change of investment that occurs when income rises. The order equation where G0, X0, and M0 are autonomous level of government spending, export spending, and import spending, respectively, and marginal propensity to import. The total import spending depends on the level of income. Next, let's see the complex income determination equation. By substituting this equation into the basic identity and then manipulating the term, we are able to derive the following complex income determination equation. S is equal to the marginal propensity to save, where 1 minus B. Vt is MPC times MPT. M is marginal propensity to import. That is marginal propensity to invest. The complex multiplier is the multiplier principle in Keynesian economics. Sympathy multiplier that is the result of the marginal propensity to save is a special case used for illustrative purpose only. The multiplier applies to any change in autonomous expenditure, in other words, an externally induced change in consumption, investment, government expenditure, or net export. Each of these operator to increase or reduce the equivalent level of income in the economy.
Assalamualaikum and hi, my name is Nuzati Izzah binti Zainon. My metric number is 275703. Today I will explain about the Post-Keynesian Economies. Thanks to Samuelson and others, mainstream economists come to include Keynesian principles of macroeconomics, grafted upon neoclassical principles of microeconomics. However, not all scholars of Canis accepted this neoclassical synthesis. Some of both deny ISLM interpretations and standard microeconomics. Post-Keynesian economists argue that the contemporary neoclassical synthesis is not just incorrect but also incompatible with Keynes' theory. Many of the post-Keynesians drew heavily on the work of Polish economist Michael Kalecki in 1933 had offered a Keynesian-like theory of total employment prior to the general theory. Research by modern post-Keynesian scholars can be found in the Journal of Post-Keynesian Economies. The chief among the post-Keynesian critics are Piero Sraffa, Nicholas Kaldor, John Robinson, Luigi Passinetti, John K. Galbraith, Sidney Weintraub. Major tenets: the post-Keynesians are a small yet diverse group of economists. Some of the ideas of each individual within the paradigm differ from these expressed by others. Nevertheless, we can discern several basic tenets of this set of ideas. Basic tenets: new Ricardian view of production value and distribution, markup pricing, indigenous money, pronounced cyclical instability, need for an income policy. New Ricardian view of production value and distribution. Neo-Ricardian Keynesians are inspired by the writings of Sraffa and those of some classical economists. Sraffa published Production of Commodities by Means of Commodities, a prelude to a critique of economic theory in 1960. According to Sraffa, the pattern of demand for various products does not affect the pattern of prices. Rather, it affects only the scale of output in each industry. The real prices of goods depend on the shares of other commodities necessary to produce them. Relative values, prices and profit, if wages are given, are determined by the production technique used to produce a composite standard commodity, which consists of the basic commodities in the economy. These basic commodities are goods that are used in the production of all other commodities. They are essential capital goods that appear as both inputs and outputs. The key feature of the composite standard commodity are that a change in wages or profit has the same effect on the input as it does on the output. Therefore, Sraffa say the composite standard commodity is Ricardo's elusive, invariable measure of value or a relative prices. Sraffa theory produced a novel conclusion: the distribution between wages and profits has entirely independent of the level of the domestic output. Any wages and profit distribution are consistent with a certain amount of output. John Robinson and other post-Keynesians expanded Sraffa unconventional theme. The actual distribution of income between wages and profits, they said, will depend on class struggle, public policies that alter the distribution, and on the rate of investment, higher rates increasing the profit shares. Robinson argued that it is desirable and possible for society to control the distribution of income. This also can be done through the socialization of investment, public ownership of the means of production, or income policies, government policies to control wages and prices. John Robinson also believed these policies are firmly rooted in the proper interpretation of Canis' book, The General Theory. In this respect, she called herself a left-wing Keynesian. Markup pricing. Price is set up by the oligopolistic corporation. For example, these firms finance investment largely from retained profits to achieve the desired levels of profits. Oligopolistic set the price above the current cost. Therefore, the price will not reflect the current demand, but it will reflect the future demand. If the cost rises, the price will be increased to maintain the markup over the price. Characteristic of oligopoly: few sellers, homogeneous of differentiated product, interdependence, high cross elasticities, importance of advertising and selling costs, competition. Oligopoly example: Pepsi, Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Honda, Burger King, and Google. Endogenous money. The amount of money is endogenous, so economic activity determines how much money there will be in the economy. Similarly, labor market outcomes are determined by the level of economic activity in post-Keynesian economies. So, unemployment is a normal feature of capitalist economies because of a lack of effective demand. Keynes himself pointed out that money comes into existence along with debts. However, inflation arises from the fight over the shares of the distribution of income. Wages increases cause production costs to rise, creating a greater demand on the part of firms for working capital to finance their more expensive goods in progress and inventories. Business borrowing rises and the money stock increases. Pronounced cyclical instability. The economy is inherently unstable. Investment must grow sufficiently to maintain consistent growth in national income and output. It frequently does not due to periods of alternating corporate optimism and pessimism. When investment falls short of what is needed to maintain the steady rate of growth, the economy slows or recedes and unemployment rises. That's all for me. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Vinushini Devi Velagam, magic number 281974. Today, I will continue present about post-Keynesian on need for an income policy. An income policy limits the average annual wage increase to the nation's annual rate of productivity growth. A successful income policy holds down inflation, minimizes the redistribution of income from inflation, avoids the loss of output associated with anti-inflationary fiscal and monetary policies. According to post-Keynesians, the class struggle for income shares and the markup pricing by oligopolies necessitate a permanent incomes policy. If there is perhaps one point on which economics with a post-Keynesian perspective are likely to agree, it is that inflation cannot be controlled through conventional instruments of fiscal and monetary policy. By reducing economic activity, conventional policy instruments essentially limit the amount of income and output available for distribution, hence increasing the social conflict behind inflation. Overall, post-Keynesian is a flow of thought that is not included in the mainstream economics, which is heterodox economics. This is because post-Keynesian has many weaknesses in terms of methodology used, where the methodology and economic model used are different from the mainstream thinking that they take in complex the real world of their analysis. The second is they also do not have an agreed economic model which combines all the models presented. And lastly, some policies are difficult to implement. So, next, let's move on to the new Keynesian economics. Okay, first, let me brief you what is the new Keynesians are. Keynesians reject the neo-Ricardian value theory of post-Keynesians. They also reject income policies, noting resource mislocations and the lack of historical efficacy of wage and price controls in lowering inflation. Next, they focus on the usual Keynesian topic of why recessions occur. Because the price level and nominal wage are inflexible downward, new Keynesian theorists claim that declining aggregate demand reduces real output and increases unemployment. So now, let's look into the graph. Downward price and wages inflexibility. Suppose that price and nominal wages are perfectly flexible. Initial equilibrium is at point A, which is AD1 intercept with AS1. If AD decrease from AD1 to AD2 and AS remain at AS1, price level will decrease from P1 to P2, whereby from point A to B. Real output decreased from its full employment level Q3 to less than full employment output Q1. The lower price level and greater unemployment will enable producers to reduce nominal wages. AS will shift rightward from AS1 to AS2. New equilibrium will be at C, which is AD2 intercept with AS2, and real output return to Q3, which is recession automatically ended. However, according to new Keynesian economics, price and nominal wages are inflexible downward. Instead of moving the economy quickly from A to B, B to C, A decrease in AD from AD1 to AD2 will move the economy from A to D, and the real output will decrease from Q3 to Q2 because wages are inflexible downward. Unemployment associated with the real output Q2 will persist until return to AD1. Active fiscal and monetary policy should be implemented to shift AD2 back to AD1. Thank you so much. That's all from me.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Laura Beatrice Adewah binti Muhammad Yusha. My metronym is 2755511. So I would like to continue with the new Keynesian economies that have offered several possible explanations for downward price and wage rigidity. First is Joseph Stiglitz of Stanford. Second is Oliver Blanchard of Harvard. Next is Stanley Fisher of Massachusetts Institute of Technology, George Akerlof of California Berkeley, Assar Lindbeck of the University of Stockholm, and Robert Gordon of Northwestern. So why downward price and wage rigidity happen? So there are 4 reasons. The first one is many costs. The second one is formal and implicit contract. The third one is efficiency wages, and the fourth one is insider-outsider theory. So let's take a look at them one by one. Let's take a look at menu cost. So menu cost is cost that firms incurred when they lower prices. So for example, a firm established new price list. So the menu cost that the firms need to incur is through new advertising. They need to print and mail new catalogs and also reprice items held in inventory. And when menu cost is too high, firms will be reluctant to lower their prices, even at a slow demand phase. So in oligopolistic industries, this unilateral price reduction may benefit rivals more. So that's when AD decrease, at least prices for the time being may remain fixed, while output and employment will fall. The second one is formal and implicit contracts. Okay, unions often sign long-term contracts containing built-in nominal wage increases. And when AD declines unexpectedly, rather than wage cut, they choose to lay off workers. So even when contracts are being negotiated. And when non-union workers do not work under formal contract, they may work under implicit contracts, which also known as informal agreements or invisible handshake. And from this, one common understanding is firms will maintain existing nominal wages during period of slack product demand. In conclusion, when formal and implicit contracts fill the workplace, then declines in wages are not forthcoming as AD declines, and in the end, recession will occur. The third one is efficiency wages. So efficiency wage theory is high wages paid to the workers make them more productive. The second one is when firms pay wage higher than market wage. It will encourage higher output, raise workers' morale. It will reduce costs associated with the turnover, which means no cost of replacing labor, and enhance productivity. Next one is wage cuts of workers is equal to the self-defeating for the firms because it will lead to declines in aggregate demand. It will encourage shirking, increase resignation, depending productivity, and also increasing the firm's per unit labor cost. In the end, it will reduce the wage inflexibility and increase the cyclical unemployment. The last one is insider-outsider theory. So insider is employed workers who possess some market power, which means they're already in the industry and already have the job. While outsider is unemployed who are unable or unwilling to underbid existing wage rates to gain employment. So in insider point of view, employers concerned that the higher paid insiders will view higher and outsider as stealing jobs and will lead them to refuse to cooperate in team production with the new lower paid workers. In this case, the firm's output and profit will suffer. In outsider point of view, employers view the cost of hiring new outsider as being too high. And even when firms is willing to hire outsider at less than existing wage, these outsiders may choose not to offer their services. Thus, they may remain unemployed, waiting for increases in aggregate demand. And wages will be inflexible downward due to the deficient in. So let's take a look at the summary of this chapter. So economists like Alvin H and Paul Samuelson help move their version of Keynes' approach directly into the macroeconomics theory. And Hicks correctly noted that Keynes' liquidity preference schedule itself depends on the level of national income. And he suggested a way to resolve by developing a unified economic model with Alvin Hansen that synthesized the Keynesian and neoclassical perspective. And this Hansen synthesis known as ISLM model. Next is Paul A. Samuelson. He identified and explored the interaction between the principle of multiplier and also accelerator. He also identified the simple algebra of income distribution, the Philip curve, the contributions such as comparative analysis, rival preference theory, efficient markets theory, factor price equalization theory, and the public expenditure theory. However, Post-Keynesian economists did not accept the neoclassical synthesis by Hicks and Hansen. They denied the ISLM interpretations and standard macroeconomics theory. Instead, they proposed among each other a new version of Ricardo's production and value theory and called for the implementation of income policy. But on the other hand, the new Keynesians reject the new Ricardian value theory and the call for income policy. Instead, they focus on traditional Keynesian question of why recession occur. So when price level and nominal wage are inflexible, aggregate demand will decline, real output will decline, while unemployment will increase. So factors that contribute to this, according to the new Keynesian, is menu cost, formal and implicit contracts, efficiency wages, and insider-outsider theory. That's it from our group, and thank you so much for your attention.